By the end of this video, you'll be creating React components at will, almost out of thin air using snippets, tabbing to fill in parameters and import dependencies, generating HTML without writing any HTML. You'll have IntelliSense for your CSS, and you'll learn how to keep classes collapsed to save real estate, and a whole lot more, because this is the ultimate Visual Studio Code setup for React. And at the end of this video, I'll show you how you can import this whole setup into your VS Code with just one click. Let's do it. All right, so I've got a clean install of Visual Studio Code. Probably looks like that when you first open it. We'll zoom in a little bit. And to get started with our ultimate React setup, we're going to create a profile just for React. And profiles are how you create a specific VS Code configuration for a language or project or however you want to set it up. So these settings will be specific to this profile. And I'm going to copy from the base theme, which just includes my theme and my preferred icons for the editor. And then the icon for this profile, I don't think there's a React. No, there's not. What about add? Nope. Okay, so let's try fire. That works. Okay, and then let's create this profile. Okay, so I've got my theme and I've got my nice icons here. Perfect. Now the first thing that I install when I'm going to do React is React Snippets. Now, there's a lot of React snippets out there, even if you don't spell it correctly. There we go. I'm kind of partial to this one because I made it, so I'm a little biased. It's a good one, but there's also this one here, ES7 React Native Redux. It's very popular. People love it. It doesn't hurt to install them both, but you can pick the one that you want. All right, so now once you have that installed, let's come in here and see how that works. All right, so let's test these snippets out. I'm going to do SFC, which is a stateless function component. And you can see there's two snippets in there. There's actually a lot of snippets. There's a lot of other stuff too. So what I'd like to do is I like to go into my settings and then look for snippets here. And then in snippet suggestions, let's change this to top, right? So now we go back here, let's SFC. All of our snippets will be at the top and they won't be mixed in. If we hit Control Space, we can see all of them, right? So here's all the snippets that we have, which is quite a few. So let's use one. Let's create a stateless function component, and we'll just call it post feed. And you can see here, it's automatically exporting the default, which is nice, right? I got two cursors going. If I hit tab, it comes here in case I want to pass some props. And if I keep going, I end up down here in the body. Now, once we're in the body here, we want to start writing some HTML. So we can do that the old fashioned way, or we can do it the new way, which is to use Emmet. So I'm going to just type div and hit tab. And if I wanted a class, I could do div main, and that gives me a class. And if I wanted an ID, I could get that too. What's even better is that you don't have to type the div at all. .main will just be shorthand for that same thing. Now, I should note that if this doesn't work for you, you may need to add a mapping in Visual Studio Code. So I'm going to change this to a JS file here. So you may be using JS files. I'm using TSX files. And then if I type div, you can see that it isn't working. I didn't even know what just happened there. Okay, so how do we fix this? Let's go to settings, and we want to go to Emmet and include languages here. We just need to map JavaScript to JavaScript React, and it's already there as a hint, which is super nice. So let's just add JavaScript here, and then JavaScript React, and then click OK. All right, and then back in our component, this should now work, right? So if we just do main, right, it does. Emmet is so handy. I love it. It is the fastest way to write markup. You can learn more about Emmet. You can do a lot with it. And you can do more things with it than just write HTML. It's really good for manipulating HTML. So in this case, this unordered list here, this our cursor was here. We wanted to select this entire div. We can do something called balance out like this here from the command palette. And then if we repeat that, you see that it just keeps going. It just keeps going until we get to that outer div. And balance inward goes the other direction. And what I like to do is I like to map these to keyboard shortcuts. So for balance out, I like to map this to Alt-O for out, right? And then for balance in, I like to map this to Alt-I. And those two keys are next to each other on the keyboard, I and O, which makes it even nicer. And now with my cursor here, I can Alt-O, right, to easily get to the outside or to the inside. And that makes it really easy to select just what you want and then just maybe mmove that around or do whatever you need to do. Now here's something else really cool that Emmet can do. A lot of times you may want to wrap something in another tag, and normally you might do it like this. Then you take that tag out, and then you come down here and you put that tag in, but there's a better way here. So Emmet has a built-in feature called wrap with abbreviation. So what I'm going to do is just put my cursor on the line of the element that I want to wrap, open the command palette, and look for wrap with abbreviation right there. And I actually like to map this to Alt-A for abbreviation. And now I can just press Alt-A, hit div, and boom, the whole thing's wrapped. How cool is that? So remember, that's Alt-O to balance out, Alt-I to balance in, and Alt-A to wrap with abbreviation. All right, now this formatting is a little messed up here. As you can see, the return should be indented. And Visual Studio Code will do this for us. I'm going to collapse that sidebar. If we just choose Format Document, right? So if we do that, it'll bump everything in. But it's better if we go to Settings and we turn on Format on Save. If we do Format on Save, turn that on. And now, right, let's go back here and let's just select all this and let's balance out. Let's use our new mechanism here and let's mess up the formatting. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to save. When I save, it just automatically formats every time I save, which is really nice. And I like to take this a step further and install something called the formatting toggle. And the formatting toggle, I'll show you what that does. Let's install that. What it does is it allows you to quickly and easily turn on and off format on save. So you can see down here, it's on, right? So if I mess up the formatting and then save, it formats the document. But sometimes you don't want to overwrite the formatting, so we can turn that off. And now, if the formatting's messed up, I can click save, right? And nothing happens. So just a really nice, easy way to toggle formatting on and off. And speaking of formatting, there's a default formatter built into VS Code. That's why all of this works. Although we may want to change to 2 spaces and click save. Perfect. But most React projects use a formatter called Prettier. So we'll want to install that from the VS Code extension marketplace here. And once we install that, let's go back. Let's change we went to tabs, not spaces. How did you let me do that? All right, so let's go back. Let's go back to 4 and it moves back here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this back, right? So let's use our balance out. Let's mess up the formatting a bit. All right, now I'm going to click save. And when I do that, nothing happens. Why? Our formatter is on. So if we do format document, we'll see that because we've installed a new formatter, Prettier, Visual Studio Code doesn't know which one we want to use. So we just need to tell it, Prettier code formatter, and boom. And you can see we know we're using Prettier because it's right down there in the status bar. Super nice. All right, now whenever we're working with JavaScript, we always want to have the ESLint extension installed. It's a must-have. ESLint surfaces errors from ESLint into the editor. So let me show you. In this file, you can see here that there's a warning here, and this is coming from the ESLint extension. It's pulling it from the terminal where the ESLint error is actually being shelled out, warning here, and then putting it in the editor. It also puts it in the problems view here. So we go to problems, you can see it right there. So actually they want us to use the next element instead of the image HTML element, which it's super interesting, but there we go. ESLint errors right in the editor. Very handy. All right, now, have you heard of Inlay Hints? So here's what Inlay Hints are. When you have properties that you're passing to a function, you can actually see what the parameters that go with those are. So if we go to settings here, we need to turn this on. So let's go to Inlay Hints. And we're going to look under TypeScript. And there's all kinds of inlay hints you can use. There's one for enums. There's one for return type. So you can see what type of value is coming back from the function, parameter names. This is the one that I really like. And let's set this to all, right? So we're going to look at all parameters here. And then Inlay Hints parameters types enabled. We're going to do that. We'll turn on property declarations, which set parameter hints everywhere. And you can see now we know what the parameter names are that we're passing. So for the error, it wants a message parameter. And for the blob service client, it wants a URL and a credential. These are Inlay Hints. They are super handy. Turn this on. I promise you, you'll thank me. They are great. While we're talking about TypeScript, I also want to show you that a lot of times in TypeScript, you can get some errors that aren't very easy to read. So you can see here, the whole thing is kind of just crammed up here at the top. And so there's a really nice extension and it's called Pretty TypeScript Errors. Check this out. This is awesome. So I'm going to install this extension. All right. Now let's go back to our error here. Now when we mouse over, you can see that thing's still up there, but it takes this and it parses it into this really nice error message down here with syntax highlighting and everything. This is really nice to have if you are like me and you're working with TypeScript. And speaking of making things easier to read, when you have a lot of markup, it can sometimes be difficult to tell where an element starts and ends, especially if the element isn't on the page. Now, this theme does a really good job with this line here of making sure that you can see that, but there is another extension that you might want to add called Indent Rainbow. And Indent Rainbow adds colorful gutters sort of off to the side of your markup so that it is much easier to see where something starts and ends. So let's go down to the bottom. You can see the colors here. And so we're looking at the div and it's kind of this color here. And it's just really easy to visually follow that all the way up and see, oh, okay, that's right here. So that's Indent Rainbow. I love that extension. Now, this project, like a lot of React projects these days, uses Tailwind CSS. And Tailwind CSS is awesome, but it can be a little verbose at times. You might have a lot of classes in your class name attribute. And so there's a very cool extension called Inline Fold, even if you don't spell it correctly. It's right here. Let's install that. Let me show you what that does. So what that does is it automatically collapses these class names into these ellipses here. And you can see that they've all been collapsed. And if you want to see them again, all you have to do is put your cursor right there and you can edit them, right? And then when you move, it goes back to collapsed. So very nice, makes it very easy to read your HTML if you find yourself with a bunch of CSS class names making this hard to read. And if you're using Tailwind CSS, another extension I highly recommend is the Tailwind CSS IntelliSense. Install that. Let's take a look here. Let's put our cursor, it expands. And now if I hit space, you can see we have all of the Tailwind classes available here, right here in our IntelliSense. Super nice, right? Because it's so hard to remember all this stuff. Orange 300 sounds good. That's the Tailwind IntelliSense right in line, along with inline fold. Makes working with Tailwind so much fun. Now, what else should we add here? Oh, you know what? I know exactly what we should add. But just real quick, before I show it to you, please make sure if you like this video to like and subscribe. It means the world to us and we read every single one of your comments. Okay, what were we talking about? Oh yeah. So when you work with strings, like let's say we want to log out the value of text. We'll say value of text is, right? And then maybe we concatenate here and say text. But the ideal way to do this is probably to use a template literal. And so we would use the brackets here, paste in the value, add the $sign, but then we have to change the quotes. And there's an extension that makes this a breeze to do, and it is called Template String Converter. So let's install the Template String Converter. All right, back in our post form, check this out. So if we're in this situation here, right, where we are concatenating and we decide we want to turn this into a string template, we're going to pull out text here. We're going to come here. We're going to add the brackets, put text in. Now watch this, y'all. As soon as I hit the $sign, it automatically changes the quotes for us. That's all the extension does, but it does it so very well. You're going to love that extension. It makes your life so much easier. Now, it wouldn't be a video in 2024 if we didn't talk about AI. And so GitHub Copilot deserves a mention here. It isn't free. This is true. However, the productivity that you're going to get from Copilot is going to be better than really any of the tips that I've shown you here. You see, Copilot is really, really good at things that are open source and widely used. And React is both of those things. So for instance, if we decided we wanted to turn this into a class component, we could just select it, open up the chat and say, convert to class component. And it can do that, no problem, right? Just right in line. This is really how you dramatically speed up your productivity. It can even anticipate what you're going to do next and write it for you. Okay, that's the only mention of AI, I promise. And last but not least, I want to show you the GitHub pull requests and issues extension, because coding is only part of what we do, right? Working with source control is another big part. And so with that extension, it's really easy to look at any open issues, to create new issues here, to even open pull requests directly from within the editor. And there's one last extension I want to show you. I feel like I've saved the best for last. There's an extension called Open in GitHub. Open in GitHub. There it is. And what this does is it allows you to open your project at various points on the GitHub website. So we can look for open repository. We can see open in GitHub repository. And that opened on another monitor here, but you can see there it is. And I like to take this, right? I like to map things to keyboard shortcuts that I use a lot. This one here, and I like to map it to Alt-G, okay? And now, whenever I'm in my project, I can just hit Alt-G, boom, opens it right in GitHub. Now, to get this profile in your VS Code with just one click, like I promised, here's what you gotta do. Open a browser, go to aka.ms/ultimate-react. What this does is it's gonna open vscode.dev, which is VS Code in your browser, with the profile here in the sidebar. And you can see here, here's all the things we changed in the video. Here's the settings that we changed, some of the key bindings that we made, and here's all the extensions that I installed. And then just click Create Profile, and this will open your local Visual Studio Code and display the profile one more time. So I guess 2 clicks really, and then just click Create Profile, and boom, it's all yours. If you liked this video, I think you might really like this other video that we've got on mastering the keyboard shortcuts in Visual Studio Code in less than 13 minutes. So check that out. We'll see you back in the next video. And as always, happy coding.